Hello everybody, and welcome to the Dick's Big Propaganda Show podcast.
We're taught that after the war the Nazis vanished without a trace, but battalions of fascists still dream of a master race. The history books they tell of their defeat in 45, but they all came out of the woodwork on the day the Nazi died. They say the prisoner of Spandau was a symbol of defeat. What else remained in prison, then the fascists they were beat. So the promise of an Aryan world would never materialise. So why did they all come out of the woodwork on the day the Nazi died? The world is riddled with maggots, the maggots are getting fat. They're making a tasty meal of all the bosses and bureaucrats. They're taking over the boardrooms and they're fat and full of pride. And they all came out of the woodwork on the day the Nazi died. So if you meet with these historians, I'll tell you what to say. Tell them that the Nazis never really went away. They're out there burning houses down and peddling racist lies. And we'll never rest again until every Nazi dies.
My name is Dick Coughlin, and welcome to my Big Propaganda Show podcast, where I will attempt to assimilate you into the Borg of neo-Marxist SJW anti-white feminazis. This podcast is available to download on iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher and TuneIn Radio. As always, this episode is sponsored by George Soros and his Jew Gold. Jew Gold. It will only cost you your mortal soul. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Soros is a little bit slow when it comes to getting the old paychecks off to me, so if you would like help supplement my income, please consider going to my Patreon and supporting my work. Or why not be the talk of the town and the envy of your friends by going over to my official merchandise shop and purchasing yourself a t-shirt or one of the other many accoutrements featuring one of 49 original designs. Links to my Patreon and merchandise shop will be linked below. Today's episode is as much an homage as it is a eulogy. It is a tribute to one of the most shameless attention whores to have graced British media in recent years. This is about the rise and the fall of Katie Hopkins. You see, sometimes you have to actually give credit to some people who are willing to push the envelope and the bounds of what was thought to be the limits of human ability, even if it's in a very bad way. Even if they do it for the wrong reasons. In that spirit, I have to give credit to Katie Hopkins. Katie Hopkins has always excelled herself when it comes to show how far she's willing to go in order to get people's attention. She truly is one of the most shamelessly despicable, hate-spewing far-right shit-fountings out there. Most people forget that she started out as a reality TV show when she was a losing contestant on the 2006 episode of The UK Apprentice. Somehow she managed to forge a career as a journalist and a media pundit, not because she had any useful insight or because she was a charming, beloved character, but because she was so hated and deliberately offensive, she was guaranteed to significantly boost ratings and clicks on sales. People didn't know what she was going to say, but they knew whenever she opened her trout-lipped mouth, she was going to say some of the most disgusting, fucked-up things you could possibly hear. Whilst that kind of approach is not exactly original or hard to come by these days, there was always something about the way Katie Hopkins did it that made it stand out from the crowd. If you want to gauge exactly how hated by the general public someone is, I personally think the best way is to see how many online petitions have been made about them. I'm not going to list off every single anti-Hopkins petition because I want to keep this video well under an hour. I will, however, give you a sample of the best and most popular ones that she has inspired. Please remove Katie Hopkins as a columnist. This was a simple one from change.org. Please fire Katie Hopkins from the Daily Mail for public racial hatred against all Muslims. Swap Katie Hopkins for 50,000 refugees. Remove Katie Hopkins from LBC Radio. Send Katie Hopkins to Syria. Ban radical hate preachers Tommy Robinson and Katie Hopkins for promoting extremism. Please LBC, sever ties with extremist Katie Hopkins. Exchange Katie Hopkins for 10,000 refugees. Demand that Katie Hopkins runs naked down Regent Street with a sausage up her bum. That, by the way, was in response to a tweet she actually made prior to Sadiq Khan becoming mayor of London. Deport Katie Hopkins to the USA since she was planning to move there anyway if Trump won. Make Katie Hopkins eat kangaroo bollocks every single day. Katie Hopkins to remain in South Africa or to face trial. Send Donald Trump, Katie Hopkins and Caitlyn Jenner to the moon. Ban Katie Hopkins from all social media sites. Sack Katie Hopkins for calling for a final solution. Now that's not to say that she doesn't have her fans, because she does. So much so that she was a regular guest on ITV's This Morning. She had her own chat show on Discovery TLC. She had a weekly column in The Sun. She regularly wrote articles for the Daily Mail Online, and she hosted her own weekly 3-hour radio phone-in show on LBC. But not anymore. In 2018, for the first year of her career, Katie Hopkins finds herself without a job in any mainstream media outlet. In January, she announced that she was now joining part of Rebel Media, an independent online alt-right media based in Canada. She joins fellow British media exile Tommy Robinson, who joined Rebel in 2017 of February. So how did Katie Hopkins get in this position? Well, in 2007, Hopkins lost her job at the Met Office shortly after appearing on The Apprentice UK. They said that she did not meet the required standards to complete her probationary period and confirmed that her performance on The Apprentice and confessions about her private life were a factor in her dismissal. Hopkins later stated that the media were informed of her dismissal an hour after she was fired. After her appearance on The Apprentice, Hopkins signed 2 deals to sell her story, one with the News of the World and another with a group called EMAP who were behind Heat magazine. The Apprentice would not be her only foray into reality TV. She also took part in I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here in 2007 as a replacement for Malcolm McLaren, and in 2015 she amazingly came second in Celebrity Big Brother. This was because, if you watch the programme, she actually opted to stay away from controversy for the entire show and instead played the character of a reasonable, very decent human being. And she managed to trick the nation yet again, although not for much longer. Her chat show that she had on TLC was dropped after 1 season, after viewing figures peaked at a dismal 65,000. And as much as people like to give the History Channel a load of shit, and much deservedly so, for some of the ridiculous crap that they've put on their network, we should never forget nor forgive Discovery for allowing Katie Hopkins to have a show on the fucking Learning Channel. One of her first regular guest TV jobs was for ITV, as a guest contributor for the TV show This Morning. The offence that she caused on this show was regular but never extreme. She would frequently make derogatory jokes and comments about ginger people, fat people, people with tattoos, but nothing that couldn't be dismissed with that classic right-wing get-out clause of "it's just a joke." However, one of her most embarrassing moments did come on an episode of This Morning when there was a discussion about children's names, a subject that may seem innocuous, but even Hopkins somehow managed to turn it into a channel for her elitism, saying, quote, "A name for me is a short way of working out what class a child's come from. Do I want my child to play with them? Saying, hi, this is my daughter Charmaine, I hear, hi, I am thick and ignorant." Now, to be fair to Katie Hopkins, this is an opinion I also share. However, in order for it to come true, the daughter's name has to be specifically Katie Hopkins. However, this then backfired on her badly when the following exchange took place between Katie Hopkins and host Philip Schofield. Katie Hopkins said, "I don't like geographical location names." Philip Schofield pointed out, "Your child's called India." Hopkins replied, "Yes, but it's not related to a location." Philip Schofield said, "India's not a location?" Hopkins replied, "No." On the 29th of November 2013, tragedy struck the city of Glasgow when a police helicopter crashed into Clwthu Vaults, a pub on the north bank of the River Clyde. The crash killed all 3 people on board and 7 civilians. As the news broke on the 30th, Katie Hopkins had tweeted out the following: "Life expectancy in Scotland based on 0708 birth is 59.5. Goodness me, that lot will do anything to avoid working until retirement." The irony of this was that she wasn't even referring to the helicopter crash, but instead some recent NHS statistics that had been released. Nevertheless, the poor timing of her tweet resulted in an online petition calling for ITV to sack her. And on December the 5th, it was announced that Hopkins had been dropped by This Morning after thousands had signed the petition. Amazingly, she did not get fired for any of the following outbursts or comments that she made. In March of 2014, a Premiership footballer by the name of Adam Johnson had pleaded guilty to grooming and engaging in sexual activity with a 15-year-old. Hopkins responded not only by defending Adam Johnson, but by victim blaming and shaming the 15-year-old. Saying, "A child, are you kidding me? Looking to impress her mates by snagging a footballer, hey presto, from slag to wag." She elaborated in a Mail Online column, saying the victim knew exactly what she was doing, and then questioned whether the age of sexual consent should be defined by one number. You probably are also familiar with the story of Alan Kurdi. He was the young boy, 3-year-old boy, whose dead body washed up on the shores of a Turkish beach. His family had been trying to flee Syria, and sadly he had died along with his 5-year-old brother, his mother. However, his father, Abdullah, had survived, and a year on from the photographs of Alan's body coming to the public domain, he spoke to the media on the anniversary of his son's death, talking about the treatment of refugees. Right. Katie Hopkins responded by attacking this poor man, who, by the way, in the last year had lost his wife and both his sons. "I will not be lectured on caring for migrants by a man who left his wife and child dead at the bottom of the Med. No thank you, Mr. Kurdi." On the subject of immigration, Katie Hopkins has also said, "I've always said that if you go to a school playground in Britain and shout Mohammed, you'll probably get 100 children running towards you." She's never conducted this experiment to see if that's actually true. On an episode of Question Time on the subject of feminism, Katie Hopkins said, "Women don't want equal treatment. They couldn't handle it if they got it. It's a tough world out there. What a lot of women are actually looking for is special treatment. What women need to realise is that they've got to toughen up." On the subject of Black Lives Matter, she simply wrote, "Dear black people, if your lives matter, why do you stab and shoot each other so much?" Now we get to the real crux of where Katie Hopkins started to impress me, when certain stories started breaking and certain things started happening to her that even I thought were not possible. For a start, did you know that Katie Hopkins had previously applied on multiple occasions to become a member of UKIP? It's always been questioned as to why Katie Hopkins didn't get into politics. Well, if she had her way, she certainly would have done. In 2015, she appeared at a UKIP conference speaking for the Electoral Reform Society, during which she made a joke about gassing the House of Lords. However, UKIP were keen to stress that Hopkins was not a member, and the party apparently wasn't aware that she was attending until a few days previously. However, they then went on to say that Mrs. Hopkins had applied to be a member several times, but her application was vetoed. Yes, in 2015, even Katie Hopkins was too much for the goddamn UKIP party. Without question, probably her most controversial moment came in 2015, when she wrote the following article for The Sun, with the headline, "Rescue Boats, I'd use gunships to stop migrants." It started with the paragraph, "No, I don't care. Show me pictures of coffins, show me bodies floating in the water, play violins and show me skinny people looking sad." It also included the paragraph, "Make no mistake, these migrants are like cockroaches. They might look a bit Bob Geldof Ethiopia circa 1984, but they are built to survive a nuclear bomb. They are survivors." The article was so offensive it even prompted a response from the UN, when the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Zaid Ra'ad al-Hussein, pointed out the word cockroaches was used by the Nazis and those behind the genocide in Rwanda. He said the Nazi media described people their masters wanted to eliminate as rats and cockroaches. This type of language is clearly inflammatory and unacceptable, especially in a national newspaper. The Sun's editors took an editorial decision to publish this article, and if it is found in breach of the law, should be held responsible with the author. Not long after this article, Katie Hopkins announced she was leaving The Sun and had been hired by the Mail Online as a columnist. However, Sun editor Tony Gallagher was quick to publicly state that Hopkins' leaving was merely a formality, as her contract was nearly up and they had no plans to renew it. Gallagher was apparently not a fan of Hopkins and had not met her and believed her to be toxic to the newspaper. Katie Hopkins was toxic to The Sun. One source to The Sun said that they were letting her contract lapse and they had no intention of keeping her on. Then came the moment that many people believe would say this is Katie Hopkins jumping the shark, following the bombings of an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester. She wrote, "Don't be part of the problem. We need a final solution. #Manchester." This was on Twitter, of course. However, the damage was already done, and she would be promptly fired by LBC Radio. Several sources at LBC did say that she was immediately fired, and when the news broke, the staff at LBC, who were all gathered in the staff room, broke into a massive cheers and applause with the news. But she still had her Mail Online contract, although they were to soon find out that she was probably much more trouble than she was worth. In 2016, a guy called Mahmoud Tariq and his family and his brother were travelling to Los Angeles for a holiday to go to Disneyland. They were detained by the United States security at the airport under suspicion of terrorism. They were later found to have no connection at all with any terrorist organisation. However, prior to them being released, Katie Hopkins had defended the United States authorities, saying they were right to stop Mahmoud Tariq. Hopkins also suggested that the two brothers were extremists with links to Al-Qaeda. She was forced to write a correction in the Mail on Sunday and tweet out an apology, which she conveniently did at 2 a.m. The apology said, "We and Katie Hopkins apologise to the Mahmoud family for the distress and embarrassment caused and have agreed to pay them substantial damages and legal costs." This was to the tune of £150,000. It wouldn't be the only legal problems that Katie Hopkins would get into. For later on that year, she would end up in a libel case with a woman called Jack Monroe after confusing her with Penny Lancaster. This resulted in a lawsuit where Katie Hopkins was forced to pay £24,000 in damages and over £100,000 in legal fees. Her time at the Mail ended, and with a whimper more than anything else, when her last article was published on October the 5th, 2015. In her last column, she explained why she wore a wedding dress to the Conservative Party conference in Manchester, describing herself as looking like a transsexual bodybuilder. The Mail announced shortly afterwards that they had come to agree to end Katie Hopkins' contract by mutual consent. So that's the Sun newspaper, the Daily Mail, LBC Radio, and even the UKIP party. Katie Hopkins was considered far too toxic, far too offensive for all of them. So she was left to go into the independent circuit. Katie Hopkins recently joined right-wing outfit Rebel Media, and she shortly announced that she was on a trip to South Africa to interview white farmers who were being attacked by, quote, black extremists. Now, during her time there, she made the news for what could be probably the last time ever. She made the news as a result of the fact that she was caught on film passing out after she had been given ketamine as part of a treatment for a dislocated shoulder. Now, I have no doubt that the veterinarian who walked past and mistook her for a horse only meant well. This apparently was the reason for her passing out, was simply because of the ketamine she had taken due to a dislocated shoulder. And then, even more impressively, when she was tempted to leave South Africa and go back, South African authorities detained her at the airport under suspicion of spreading, quote, racial hatred. And you have to say, ladies and gentlemen, of all the things that she's ever done, of all the amount of times Katie Hopkins has gone too far, this has got to be the limit. The fact that she managed to get stopped by South African fucking authorities for spreading racial hatred. How fucking racist do you have to be for South Africa to suddenly say no too fucking much? She must have been walking through like John McClane in Die Hard 3 when he's got that sandwich board. Now, hopefully this will be the last time we ever hear from Katie Hopkins, but who knows? Maybe, just maybe, she has it in her to lower the bar even further and somehow get sacked from Rebel Media. And if anyone can, Katie can. But if you feel bad for Katie Hopkins, don't, because, as she said in 2014, being hated is a cross I bear, like the Jesus of the outspoken. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Richard the Dick Coughlin. This has been the Dick's Big Propaganda Podcast. Thank you for listening. Take care.
We're taught that after the war the Nazis vanished without a trace, but the tiny youngs of fascists still dream of a master race. The history books they tell of their defeat in 45, but they all came out of the woodwork on the day the Nazi died. They say the prisoner of Spandau was a symbol of defeat. Whilst Hess remained in prison, then the fascists they were beat. So the promise of an Aryan world would never materialise. So why did they all come out of the woodwork on the day the Nazi died? The world is riddled with maggots, the maggots are getting fat. They're making a tasty meal of all the bosses and bureaucrats. They're taking over the boardrooms and they're fat and full of pride. And they all came out of the woodwork on the day the Nazi died. So if you meet with these historians, I'll tell you what to say. Tell them that the Nazis never really went away. They're out there burning houses down and peddling racist lies. And we'll never rest again until every Nazi dies.